You know that strangely unsettling feeling when you're driving home from work?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like you pull into your driveway, you turn off the engine, and you suddenly realize you have absolutely zero memory of the last 15 minutes of the drive.
It's wild. It's actually kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It really is. You navigated heavy traffic, you stopped at all the correct red lights, you made the right turns, but your conscious mind was just a million miles away.
Right. You were basically not even in the vehicle.
Exactly. And we usually just, completely ignore that phenomenon because the outcome was fine.
Yeah.
You arrive safely in your driveway, so you don't really stop to question the mechanics of how it actually happened.
Yeah, we just blindly accept that some invisible underlying system just kind of took over the controls while we checked out.
Well, today, for you listening right now, we are going completely under the hood of that invisible system.
We really are.
Yeah, we're looking at some deeply practical, just incredibly resonant philosophical writings that pull back the curtain on this autopilot we all live on.
And it's so necessary to do this.
It is. So the mission for this deep dive is to wake you up from that autopilot and to map out the multiple simultaneous journeys that you are currently taking, probably without even realizing it.
Because it is just wild to think about how much of our daily existence is running on a hidden script.
Right. And becoming aware of that script is, it's the ultimate key to reclaiming your agency.
Absolutely. If we can understand the mechanics of our own habits and, the true nature of the burdens we carry every day, we actually transition from being just passive passengers in our own lives to actively steering the ship.
But before we can figure out where we are steering, we have to look at how we are moving in the first place.
Right, the actual engine.
Exactly. And the foundational reality here is that habits are not an enemy. They're absolutely essential for human survival.
Oh, completely.
From the sequence of how we brush our teeth to the way we structure a work email to our baseline emotional reactions, so much of our lives flows through repeated automated behaviors.
If you had to consciously calculate every single step of your day, living would become mathematically impossible.
Yeah, it would be exhausting.
It would. Imagine having to relearn how to tie your shoes every single morning, or having to consciously parse the grammar of every sentence before you speak.
I can't even imagine.
Right. So habits lighten the mind's burden. They conserve our very limited daily reserves of time, energy, and attention so we can, deploy them elsewhere.
Okay, let's unpack this because I like to think of habits as the cruise control feature on a car.
Ooh, that's a really good analogy.
Right. It's a brilliant piece of engineering for saving energy on a long, monotonous stretch of highway.
Yeah.
You just let the car's computer manage the speed so you can relax your foot and avoid cramping up.
Yeah, there's a heavy lifting for you.
Exactly.
Right.
But cruise control becomes lethal the second you fall asleep at the wheel. The car is still moving at 65 miles an hour, but nobody is actually driving.
That is a perfect visualization of the danger here. Because habits make our daily lives so frictionless, they become entirely invisible to us.
Right.
And as long as a habit goes unnoticed, it goes unquestioned. And an unquestioned habit slowly, subtly slides over into the driver's seat.
Which is the scary part.
It is. So the issue we're looking at isn't a binary of habits are good or habits are bad. The metric that actually matters is whether consciousness is present while the habit is executing.
Which brings us to a trap that really caught me off guard when I was reading through this material, the reading trap.
Oh yeah, this is a fascinating point.
Culturally, if someone says, I read a book every single week, we throw a parade for them.
Right, we do.
We view the mere act of reading as this universally virtuous, intellectually nourishing activity.
We treat it as a total proxy for intelligence. But over time, even something as inherently noble as reading can rot into a purely mechanical repetition.
Yeah.
You might physically trace the words on a page every night before bed, but your curiosity has just completely withdrawn from the process.
I am absolutely guilty of this, by the way.
Oh, I think we all are.
I will find myself buying the same types of books by authors who share my exact worldview, seeking the exact same answers to problems I've already, made up my mind about.
Just stay in the comfort zone.
Exactly. I am technically reading, but I'm really just seeking a dopamine hit of validation. I'm going through the motions just to satisfy the identity of being a reader.
You have essentially turned your brain into a confirmation bias machine.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
The physical act of reading persists, but the consciousness, the part of you that critically selects and discerns and wrestles with uncomfortable new ideas, has been put to sleep by the habit.
Right.
True knowledge isn't about the volume of pages consumed. It lies in knowing what to read when you actually need it and having a deliberate intention behind the consumption.
It's such a subtle trap.
Yeah.
And it bleeds directly into how we communicate every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the language we use just to survive a chaotic week. Phrases like, well, that's just how things are, or everyone does it this way, or my personal favorite, it is what it is.
The classics.
Right, but I actually have to push back on the philosophy here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if my boss hands me a completely nonsensical bureaucratic assignment at like 4:30 on a Friday afternoon saying it is what it is basically my psychological survival mechanism.
Sure.
It keeps my blood pressure down. So why is that so dangerous?
Well, I completely understand the utility of that in the moment. I mean, it functions as a pressure valve.
Right.
But the danger lies in what those phrases do to your internal cognitive machinery over time. When you say, this is just how the system works, you are not explaining a situation. You are closing the file on it.
Oh, wow.
You are executing what's called a thought-terminating cliche.
So it's essentially throwing up a white flag. I'm telling my brain to just stop looking for a solution.
Exactly. You are yielding to the environment instead of engaging with it. If you use that language frequently enough, habit stops merely shaping the words coming out of your mouth and begins dictating the actual boundaries of your imagination.
That is so true.
You stop attempting to understand why the maze is designed the way it is or how to break out of it because you've conditioned yourself to just stare at the blank wall and say, this is what mazes look like.
There is a really haunting couplet in the source material that captures this perfectly. It says, habit carries one forward. Consciousness gives direction. Many are on the move. Few know where they are going.
Many are on the move. Few know where they are going. That summarizes the modern condition beautifully.
It really does.
We are highly efficient, highly productive, and completely lost.
So for you listening right now, as you commute or fold laundry or whatever you're doing, the challenge is to pause and ask yourself a rather brutal question. Is this current situation truly what I consciously want, or have my unchecked habits simply deposited me here?
And realizing that is a necessary, albeit, uncomfortable disruption.
Yeah.
Freedom is not the eradication of habits. Again, we need them to function. True freedom is the ability to remain awake in their presence and to possess the conscious ability to suspend them the moment they no longer serve your actual destination.
Which brings up the most important question of all. If consciousness is the steering wheel and we finally wake up and grab it, what map are we actually looking at? Where are we trying to direct ourselves?
That is the big question. We usually assume we are walking one singular path through life.
Right.
We measure it chronologically or by our career trajectory.
Right.
But the reality is that we are engaged in 3 separate simultaneous journeys every single day, whether we realize it or not.
Let's break those down because understanding this completely shifts how you view a quote-unquote successful day.
So the first is the outward journey. This is the realm of the objective world. It's driven by causes, techniques, effort, intangible rules.
It's the visible stuff.
Exactly. It encompasses your career,
Yeah.
your financial stability, the physical things you build, and your visible achievements. It is basically what goes on your resume.
Then there is the inward journey. This is entirely subjective and completely invisible to the outside world.
Right.
This is where you confront your own internal landscape, your fears, your private hopes, your vulnerabilities, and your unmet needs.
And finally, there is the moral or spiritual journey. This one is quieter, but it serves as the absolute bedrock for the other 2.
Yeah.
This journey is concerned with a single question. What kind of person are you becoming as a result of walking the outward and inward paths?
The text uses a brilliant physics metaphor to explain how these 3 journeys interact. It describes them as communicating vessels.
What's fascinating here is how literal that metaphor is. For anyone who's forgotten high school physics, communicating vessels are a set of separate glass tubes that are all connected at the bottom by a single pipe. When you pour liquid into just one of those tubes, the water doesn't stay isolated. The pressure forces the liquid through the bottom pipe, and the water level rises or falls in all the other tubes until a perfect equilibrium is reached.
So you cannot isolate a single journey. Whatever happens in your objective, outward career, directly alters the water level in your subjective, inward emotional state and impacts your moral character.
They are inextricably linked. Now, the outward journey is critical. We cannot just dismiss it.
Of course not.
Without an intense dedication to technique and outward causes, we would have no medical science, no architecture, no civilization, The human being is designed to work and shape the external world.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because in a modern society that almost exclusively incentivizes and rewards that outward journey, how do we survive?
It's tough.
It is. We live in a culture that hands out promotions and bonuses and social status for your technique and your external effort. Nobody throws you a lavish dinner party to celebrate your quiet moral integrity or your inner emotional balance.
Very true.
So how do you stop the I did this, I achieved that mindset from just consuming all your energy?
That right there is the defining imbalance of modern life.
Yeah.
When you pour all of your time, focus, and energy into the outward vessel, when you become a master of technique and career advancement, but completely neglect the inward vessel, you turn mechanical.
Yeah.
You imprison your identity entirely within the ego of your external achievements.
And because those vessels are connected, pouring all that pressure into the outward tube drains the inward tube completely dry.
Exactly, resulting in a very specific modern phenomenon, the profound exhaustion of success.
Oh man, you see this all the time.
You really do. People reach the absolute pinnacle of their outward journey. They get the dream job, the wealth, the status, and they are hit with crippling anxiety or depression.
Yeah, they cannot understand why they are so unhappy when they supposedly won the game.
It's because their inner journey was starved to feed the outer one.
And the fallout from that imbalance isn't just a personal tragedy, it actually becomes a societal problem.
How so?
Well, if someone damages themselves inwardly, like if they become completely estranged from their own emotional reality and moral compass just to get ahead, they inevitably start doing harm to the people around them.
Hurt people, as the saying goes. To balance those vessels, we have to strive for what the text defines here as true maturity.
And that's a loaded word.
It is. So think of maturity not merely as growing older, but as a deliberate untethering. It's the hard one, freedom from blind dependence on the external world's validation, and equally, freedom from being enslaved by your own internal emotional turbulence.
Untethering is a great word for it, because if your ego isn't blindly tethered to your job title on the outward journey, then a bad quarter at the office doesn't trigger a total collapse of your self-worth on the inward journey.
Exactly.
But to achieve that untethering, we have to do the heavy lifting. We have to look directly at the things we normally use our outward success to cover up, our own vulnerabilities and our own needs.
Right, because we spend immense amounts of energy trying to project an image of complete self-sufficiency.
Right.
But we are fundamentally dependent creatures. We have to define our terms clearly here, though.
Okay, let's define them.
Our need is rooted in what we lack. Our vulnerability is rooted in what we fear.
So need is lack. Vulnerability is fear.
Yes.
Every time we experience fear, it's just a flashing dashboard light reminding us of our own limitations.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, if you refuse to acknowledge your own vulnerability, if you armor up and pretend you don't lack anything and you don't fear anything, you lose the capacity to truly perceive those traits in anyone else.
Wow.
You become blind to the human condition itself.
Which leads to a really dark dynamic in how we treat people.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if I'm a manager at a company and I think I know exactly what my team needs, but I violently refuse to analyze my own deep-seated fears of failure or my own need for control, I am not actually displaying empathy toward them.
No, you're not.
I'm just dominating them. I'm managing them as objects in my outward journey rather than connecting with them on the inward one.
False empathy always degrades into manipulation. When you lack self-awareness, you view other people's vulnerabilities not as a point of connection, but as levers you can pull to get what you want.
So what's the antidote?
The antidote to this domination is a radical shift in why you are carrying the burden in the first place.
How does that shift happen, practically speaking?
When a person stops acting merely to inflate their own ego and begin serving a greater cause, whether that's their community, their family, or living in the name of a higher spiritual truth, the source of their internal strength transforms.
Right.
Because the effort is no longer about propping up their individual outward achievement, the internal landscape calms down.
Their fears begin to fade because the stakes are no longer just about their personal vanity. Their raw needs give way to a deeper sense of trust.
There is a line from the philosophy that perfectly encapsulates this transformation. The one who knows their weakness finds a path to strength. The heart that sees its need becomes a path to mercy.
That's beautiful.
It really is. Acknowledging your limitations is the very mechanism that makes you dignified and truly free.
So what does this all mean? It brings us to the ultimate destination of these three journeys, which is described in the text as the treasure,
Yes. The treasure.
We all carry this treasure within us, but it is buried deep. It requires immense labor, friction, and patience to unearth. This treasure is the synthesis of true dignity, unshakable integrity, and internal freedom.
And a treasure of that magnitude requires a formidable guardian.
Right. And that guardian is composure.
Yeah.
But we are not talking about composure as just, keeping a polite, straight face when you're angry.
No, not at all.
Composure is described as a psychological steel armor. It protects your inner treasure by demanding absolute authenticity.
Composure acts as a structural reinforcement against the pressures of the communicating vessels we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
When the outward journey throws chaos at you, composure forces you to shed all forms of pretense. It prevents you from adopting a fake persona just to survive.
It demands that you live entirely in the truth of who you are, regardless of external circumstances. Life is essentially a lifelong vigil over this inner treasure.
To bring this out of the abstract, let's look at a highly relatable scenario.
Okay.
Imagine two people working in the exact same difficult environment. Let's say they're both nurses in an underfunded, chaotic hospital ward.
Good example.
The outward conditions are identical. The technique required is the exact same. The hours are equally grueling. But their inward journeys are vastly different.
Right. So the first person views their heavy responsibility through the lens of a trustee.
Yes.
They acknowledge the difficulty. They accept the discipline required the moment they step onto the floor. They grow exhausted because, they're human, their outward vessel is being drained, but they don't descend into bitterness.
Exactly.
They are actively guarding their inner treasure of dignity by remaining faithful to their purpose.
Then you look at the second person in the exact same ward. They resent the burden. They think narrowly about their own discomfort.
Yeah.
They belittle the required discipline, they complain to anyone who will listen, and they spend their entire shift mistaking the idea of escape for actual freedom.
They think if they could just quit, they'd be free.
Right, completely ignoring the internal rot happening while they complain.
It's the ultimate tragedy of the inner journey. You cannot forge your own discharge papers from the core responsibilities of life.
You really can't.
True freedom is not the absence of a burden. It's the grace with which you carry it. The person who betrays that trust, who constantly seeks the escape hatch, passes through this life without ever tasting the profound, quiet integrity of the trustworthy person.
They survive the outward journey, but they arrive at the end with their inner and moral vessels completely empty.
For you listening, this is the mirror we all have to look into. When your personal burdens feel the heaviest, whether that's navigating a toxic workplace, managing a chaotic household, or dealing with an invisible personal struggle, which of those two people are you mirroring?
Are you accepting the friction as a trustee, guarding a treasure? Or are you just complaining and scanning the room for an exit?
It's a deeply confronting question.
It is. But answering it honestly is the only way to achieve the maturity and the untethering we've been talking about.
The human journey simply does not stop. As long as there is life, there is no stillness. If your body is trapped and cannot move, your mind must step up and think. If your mind grows exhausted from the outward effort, your heart has to take over and remember your moral foundation.
Because the journey of a human being is intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and ethical, all happening at the exact same time.
Right.
If you desire something rightful with sincerity, and you maintain that composure, you will inevitably find both the path and the method. The person who refuses to lose hope never actually falls off the map. Life ceases to be a grinding habit and becomes an unending discovery.
An unending discovery. I think that is the perfect framework for everything we've explored today.
I agree.
We've traced the invisible autopilot of our daily habits, we have mapped the physics of our 3 simultaneous journeys, and we've armored up with the composure needed to guard our inner dignity.
It's a lot to process, but it's so empowering.
It really is. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to turn over in your mind as you step back into your day.
Okay.
If our habits build the roads of our outward journey, and our composure guards the quiet integrity of our inward journey, what exactly happens to the paths of the people around us when our communicating vessels inevitably overflow?
Oh, that's a great question.
Does your invisible autopilot make someone else's daily journey just a little bit harder to navigate? Or does your inner composure make their path a little bit clearer? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay awake at the wheel, stay curious, and keep questioning your direction.